Hello.
Hi Mario, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Baruch Hashem. We're going to do Tisha B'Av tonight.
Sorry?
We're doing Tisha B'Av tonight.
I don't know what we're. Ernie mentioned something about. Yeah, it probably is. Hilchos of Tisha B'Av. Yeah.
Here, so here, you can sit here, I'll move. Here, I'm gonna sit here. Come here, sit next to me.
Ernie.
Gentlemen, remember, we're doing volume 12. We're doing Tisha B'Av.
Here.
Tisha B'Av.
Play.
Page 303.
In what chelik? Sorry.
Volume 12.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, this is going to be perfect.
Let's see who's on.
Volume 12. It's just the Hilchos of Tisha B'Av. It's very appropriate, I think.
Wait, so where are we? What page?
Page 303. 303. Anybody else is here? Bernie? Harold. Harold is here.
I'm here.
I have volume 12. Remember, we're doing Tisha B'Av.
Oh, yeah.
Volume 12, page 303. We have a group, Yaakov Yellen and his wife are here, and Saul is here. So we have nice in person. Harold is going to get volume 12. Bernie is probably going to sign in. Here is Chaim. Chaim. We're doing volume 12, Hilchos Tisha B'Av, page 303.
I already have it.
Yeah, very appropriate.
The big question is whether we can shave on Thursday night.
Well, if certainly Friday morning you can shave and launder and wash and all of that. That's written mafurish. We'll see what he says. The question that came up at Rabbi Kesselman, he wasn't sure, is if somebody wanted to eat meat in the morning. I think the Rav Wozners and Rav Yoshevs are machmir to wait till Chatzos. But we'll see if anybody.
Because it's Erev Shabbos, because I know you can do laundry already Thursday night, because it's Erev Shabbos.
By the way, you look great with that beard, Chaim. You should keep it.
Oy vey. Tell my wife.
This is not in my.
Is Bernie here?
Obviously, he's not on the Zoom. I don't know where he is.
So he hasn't left on his trip yet.
No.
Okay.
No.
So
You want me to call and see where he is? I can. Okay, I'll take care of it.
okay. Each year we commemorate the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash during the 3 weeks. The morning practices begin Yud Zayin Tammuz. Gradually they become more intense, reaching their crescendo on Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av. In this year, we will study many of the halachic guidelines of Erev Tisha B'Av. That's really good, since tonight is Erev Tisha B'Av. And Tisha B'Av, that were enacted to publicly demonstrate our sorrow of the loss of the Beis Hamikdash. The Mishnah Masechta Tainis outlines the halachos of the somber meal eaten before the fast, the Sudam of Sekes. Erev Tisha B'Av, Lo yochel adam shnei tavshilim. It means you shouldn't eat two cooked dishes together. Now we're going to see that our practice is that we eat a meal, a real meal, and then right before the fast, you have a Sudam of Sekes. So this is referring to the Sudam of Sekes. It says, Lo yochel basar, lo yishteh yain. Interesting. The Sudam of Sekes, you cannot eat meat. Well, we haven't been eating meat all 9 days. What does this Mishnah want? And we haven't been drinking wine all 9 days. So let's see. By virtue of an old minhag, Ashkenazim and some Sephardim refrained from eating meat and drinking wine throughout the 9 days, which began Rosh Chodeshah. However, Me'ikar Adin dictates that a person may not partake of meat and wine in the meal one eats before the onset of the fast. That means the stuff that we do are minhagim only. Ikar Adin, this Mishnah in Titus brings it, you can't eat meat in the meal right before Tisha B'Av. Me'ikar Adin. We've accepted Ashkenazim, the Sephardim usually Shavua Shechol Bo, meaning this year would be Saturday night. But some years, when Tisha B'Av falls on Sunday, they have no Shavua Shechol Bo. So they have no prohibition at all. From the previous week, they've been eating meat.
They also go swimming.
Hmm?
They also go swimming until Shavuot Shabbat.
In light of the Mishnah statement, this law is recorded in the Shulchan Aruch. Erev Tisha B'Av, lo yochel adam b'sudam avsekes, she'ochla akar chatzos, basar. The meat, the final meal after chatzos, you shouldn't eat meat. What does the Shulchan Aruch seem to imply? That prior to chatzos, you could eat meat. V'lo yishtei yayin, v'lo yachal shnei tavshilim. You shouldn't have two cooked meals, and you shouldn't drink wine. The Mishnah Berurah explains these halachas engender a mournful feeling related to the destruction. Lo yochel kedei la'arbos avel v'liskor churban habayis v'yitztar. The Mishnah Shulchan Aruch mentioned a specific ban on drinking wine. The Chofetz Chaim, the Mishnah Berurah, and the accompanying work Sharat Zion discusses if this law also applies to beer and schnapps and other intoxicating beverages. The Mishnah says, "Ein lishtos shechar." You should not drink beer. Also writes that if one is weak and drinks beer to give him more strength, it's permitted. This scenario is not likely nowadays, as beer is not used for this purpose normally. Says the Sharat Zion, "V'chol shekein de'ein lishtos mei dvash," or hard liquor. Some poskim, including Rav Ben Zion Abashol, rule that in the spirit of Avelis, a person should also refrain from soft drinks. He's a modern posek.
This is only after Chatzos.
After Chatzos, as part of the Sudam of Sekes.
Right.
In a related vein, the Balatanya, Rav Shmuel Zalman of Liadi, writes in the Shulchan Aruch Harav that a person must not eat foods which leave a long lingering taste before the fast of Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av, like Parmesan cheese, some kind of very pungent, sharp something. Although his concern does not appear to be one of mourning, since he mentions Yom Kippur as well, there's no din of Avelis Yom Kippur. He presumably feels that one may not allow a sweet taste to remain in one's mouth during these major fasts. He wants to avoid spitting in shul. Yilos kodem knisas shoresh matok. No, he says people who wanted to avoid spitting, like they used to have spittoons, things like that. Somehow, we don't have this issue anymore. You know what? Yeah. So let me ask you a question. Were they chewing tobacco?
What were they doing?
Yeah. Why was it an issue 100 years ago that people were spitting and we don't spit anymore?
They chew tobacco.
So they were chewing tobacco.
Yeah, I remember in my show, they had the spittoon. And they used to spit the spittoon.
So-
Bima, and everyone went and spit into.
Yaakov, says there were on the
You're
four
aging
corners of the
yourself,
bima,
Harold. You're
there was
aging.
a spittoon. He
A
said-
spittoon. We had an ursula spittoon. I remember.
So they were chewing tobacco.
Yeah,
Must be Hasidim there.
it was the Wild West.
Up in Texas.
100 years ago, Harold, that's a long time.
200.
So he says to avoid spitting, that people would suck on a sweet root, licorice. Aval be'erev Yom Kippur, uve'erev Tisha B'Av, asur she'yishar abtikut bepiv. You shouldn't eat something that leaves a sweet taste in your mouth. Ucheshabolei arok bolei amatikut, because when you're fasting, you're going to be swallowing spit, but it's going to have a sweet taste, and in some ways, it's not appropriate for a fast. It means your regular saliva is not a problem, but he wants to say, but if it's flavored, because you've put some kind of flavoring in your mouth, that would be a problem. I've never heard of that. Yaakov, did you ever hear of that?
No.
Okay. Regarding raw fruits and vegetables, we're talking about now the Sudam Afsekes. The Torah writes that a person may eat multiple varieties of them, because when it says shtei tavshilin, it means cooked food. Birakos uperos mutzulafos benapas. People would dip their bread in vegetables, so you can, or ate it with vegetables, and even fruit. So you can, they came along with your bread, and you can eat multiple types of fruits and vegetables. That's not a problem. Kishen chayin, because they're raw. I feel common meaning. So there's no restriction when it says shtei tavshil, it's only cooked food. So what is the status of different varieties which are cooked together in a single dish? The Shulchan Aruch writes, as the Mishnah will explain, the Mishnah will explain, that if they are typically cooked together, they are considered a single dish. I'm thinking about like when my wife makes ratatouille, right? So she cooks zucchini and tomato and whatever. There's certain vegetables that go into a certain tafshil. I think that's what he may be referring to, that if these are a certain dish and it's really considered one tafshil and not multiple tafshil. That's, I think, what he's going to say. Afilu b'shel min echad, b'shtei kederos, mikra shtei tafshil. So this is a chumrah. You cook one type of vegetable in two different pots. That's a problem. No, soup is not a problem.
Why?
Because we're not talking about that Suda. We're talking about, we'll see, our minig is right before you go to shul, you sit on the floor, you eat a hard-boiled egg, you dip it in ash. That's called the Suda Mafsekas. The meal before, like that you're gonna eat to give you strength so you can fast, that's not the meal we're talking about. They'll clarify that soon. If you cook even one vegetable, but in two different pots, that's called two different tafshilim. Also, he says you should be careful. Don't put two species of vegetables in the same pot. Gon apunin, pea. They used to eat their peas with onions and eggs. Okay, he's in Tzvat, right? The Rav Yosef Karo. So, anyways, even though those are multiple different cooked things, since that's the way they prepared that tafshil, that's okay. Rav Shloimer says the Mishnah Berurah. Most of the time they put onions and eggs into peas. They fry dough and eggs together. I don't know what that is. Pancakes? I don't know. Say it again.
Actually had that in there.
What did you have?
Really?
Yeah, what was it called? Rock?
I don't remember.
They have exactly
It
this.
was like a pancake patty and with an egg and peas.
No.
No.
It says it, fried dough.
Eggs and fried dough.
Oh, no, they actually put a bacon egg into it.
No, Yaakov and Haila are telling us they just came back from Tunisia with Mark Shapiro on that food was served to them in Tunisia, some Jewish food.
Wow.
Aval dogim osr l'tagin bebeitzim. He says fish fried with eggs. So I guess breading. Does breading have egg in it? When you fry fish. So that would be a problem. Could go in sharova pan v'vashon some below beitzim. To fry it with eggs would be a problem, since most of the time people fry without eggs, and this is showing like some kind of pleasure. You shouldn't have it for that meal. Regarding a dish of one type of food cooked in more than one pot, which is Shulchan Aruch prohibits, the Yalkut Yosef writes that this applies specifically when these dishes are prepared with different constituencies or textures. The Suda Mafsekes in the final meal, Asr Lechol Shnei Tavshil, can eat two cooked foods. Vafilu Bishul Minecha B'Shnei Kederos. He reiterates, even if you cook carrots in one pot and then you cook carrots in another pot, that's not allowed. Maybe echad avav echad, right? Maybe you prepared in one pot a thick version and in another pot a thin version. Kamzeh chalshuv shnei tafshilim. Aval im shnei shavim ela shehutzrach levashal b'znei shnei abayim mevudim. You're cooking, let's say, sweet carrots, cooked carrots, but you have a big crowd coming. So you need 2 pots to cook a large volume. That's not considered shnei tafshil. It's considered shnei tafshil if you cook carrots in 2 different ways, maybe one spicy and one sweet or something like that. Ushtei beitzim ha'achas kasha v'achas raka sh'ru'i l'gmiya. Let's say a hard-boiled egg and then a soft-boiled egg. It's considered chashiv shnei tafshilim. It's considered 2 tafshilim. Vafilu davar nechad kamoshu chai. Let's say something that's eaten raw. Im nizbashel chashiv tafshilim. So it's considered a tafshil. We already learned. Remember by bishul akum, something that if you eat carrots raw. So if an akum cooks carrots, it's not considered bishul akum. Anything you can eat raw, if an akum cooks it, it's not a problem with bishul akum. Something cannot be eaten raw, then of course there's always a problem. So he's saying this is not a heter here. It means even something that you can eat it raw and you cook it. Oh, you might think it's not considered bishul. It is considered a tafshil. Uvafuya filu kameminim ein din shnei tafshilim. So this is interesting. A baked product like bread, right, or any kind of bake. So this halach of shnei tafshilim doesn't. If you have a bread and a cookie and a roll, that's not an issue. Says the Orlet Sion, who is Rabbi Ben Sion Abba Shol, the status of vegetable soup. Susie was asking about vegetable soup. Writes that this is considered a single cooked food, right? Because how do you make soup? You put different it's the same vegetables you put in soup, so that's considered like one tafshil. Shayla Maraki Rakot, he was asked vegetable soup, or tafshil agvaniot ubeitzim shakshuka, tomato with eggs. Ayla, you don't like that?
No.
I like that.
Enjoy.
Yeah, no, especially the Israeli ones are spicy.
But-
Yeah,
Yeah, perfect before a fast.
say it again.
Perfect before a fast.
Yeah, but it might be a little too spicy.
Spicy.
The Shon Saginahor.
Uh-huh. I am mutter la'ochlam besudam afsekes. So vegetable soup, which has a lot of ingredients in it, carrots and celery and different vegetables, and the combination of eggs with tomatoes, is that considered shnei tafshilim or not? Tshuva. Maraki rakos yeshbo kama sugei, where there's a lot of different vegetables in that. Or tafshil agvaneru beitzim nechshavim tafshil echad. He paskins is one tafshil mutter la'achlam besudam afsekes. The Piskei Tshuva addresses a different issue concerning foods which have been pasteurized, as in various dairy products. Are these considered cooked? He writes that since pasteurization is performed only to kill bacteria, it's not considered cooked. Gam bizmanenu shemotzrei chalav ovrim talich pastor. Our dairy products undergo pasteurization. It's heated like, I think, 60 degrees centigrade. Right? Boiling is 100 degrees centigrade. I think pasteurization is 60 degrees. Our temperature, right, 37 degrees centigrade is 98. So 60 degrees is and 100 degrees centigrade is 212, right? Or right. So they discovered if you pasteurize milk, so they used to get all sorts of bacterial diseases that way, brucellosis and others. So Louis Pasteur discovered that you kill the bacteria that way, but it doesn't destroy the taste it doesn't really harm the taste. Now wine is also, they do the same thing, the mavushal, but they claim that does affect the taste of the wine. That's why some people are, makpid only to have yain ena mavushal. We're not talking about now in the 90s, we're talking about general drinking wine. So the bacteria, so that's, you don't have to consider that when you're adding up the shtei tafshilim. Let's say you're going to have yogurt. Is that considered a tafshil? It's not considered a cooked food, even though it's heated. The gravity of the moment expresses itself not only in the limited menu, but also in the general context surrounding the Sudam Afsekes. In Masech the Tinius, the Gemara recounts the particular mourning practices observed by Rabbi Yehuda Eloi at that time. This is in Tinius, Lamed Amid Aleph, and Lamed Amid Beis. Erev Tisha B'Av Mevilo Pas Charev Melech. They brought him a dried truck in shtickel broit with salt, the Yoshe, and he sat. Bain Tanu Likirayim. between the oven and the stove. That was the least respectable place in the house. And he would eat there. And he would drink a jug of water. Similar to someone who has a deceased relative in front of him. In light of this account, based on the Gemara and Tainus, the Shulchan Aruch writes that everyone should seek to conduct himself in this way. The Ramah adds on the Ashkenazic tradition of dipping the bread in ashes. If they can get away with it, they should only have a dry piece of bread and salt and a jug of water. There's a chumrah, people would dip their bread in the ash and eat it. Al Shem, Vayigros Ba'afar, that's a pasuk in Eicha. Ula'achlo need it. Vayigros B'chatzatz, and it causes him to wallow in ashes. And you eat on the floor for Sudam of Sekes. The Shulchan Aruch carefully notes that these practices apply if someone is able to do this. On the heels of this, the Kaf Chaim writes that if someone finds it difficult to sit on the floor, at the very least, he should sit somewhere other than in his regular seat. With the Sefer Erech Lechem Kosov, the Yemenu Yachol Yashev Al Gabe Karka, Mia Yeshna Mekomo, he should change his place. In any case, the Shulchan Aruch states explicitly that all these halachos relate specifically to the very last meal before the onset of the fast. However, prior to this, if someone partakes of another proper meal, there's no need whatsoever to observe these specific restrictions and behaviors like we mentioned before. This is going to be the last meal. We have in mind that I'm not going to eat anything more before the fast. And that's number one. If we're talking about a meal before chatzos. But which is our minute. We sit down and eat a big meal, and we'll bench, and then you'll wash again, and you'll have the Sudam Afsekis on the floor with a piece of bread. Then you don't have to be cautious about all these things. And here, Rabbi Eliezer Melamed, many have the practice to eat a filling meal prior to and separate from the Sudam Afsekis. Then at the formal Sudam Afsekis itself, only one cooked dish is eaten, such as a hard-boiled egg. That's usually the minhag, together with bread dipped in ashes. I just want to read this footnote. The Ramah reports a similar custom to first eat a full meal, recite Birchas Hamazon, recite Mincha, and then eat the Sudam Afsekis. The Mishnah Berurah notes that a number of Achronim are not pleased with this custom, since the Sudam Afsekis is not a real meal, and many people are no longer hungry. He does quote the Eliyah Rabbah, who's a major Achron that the Mishnah Berurah always quotes, who defends this practice because the first meal is eaten to ensure one can fast well, which is a worthy reason. See also Piskei Teshuvos, who cites a comment of the Magen Avraham that a full meal commemorates the Suda eaten at this time in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, which is a joyous one. The common custom today seems to still follow this practice of the Ramah, which is to eat the full meal, recite Birchas Hamazon, recite Mincha, then eat the Sudam Afsekis. The suggestion of Bnei Halacha brought in the text is also similar, though it contains the additional benefit that the two meals are not immediately after one another, so one is not necessarily entirely satiated for the Sudam Afsekis. Let's see what the Rav Eliezer Melamed, the Bnei Halacha say. Many have the practice to eat a filling meal prior to and separate from the Sudam Afsekis. Then it's V'aminig HaMekabel she'ochlim b'tzaharayim, in the afternoon, Suda Regila in Kama Tafshil. Eat a big meal with many different dishes. Likrat Tzom, as half hour before the Tzom, something like that. Oichlin is Sudam Afsekis, ubo Tafshil echad bilvad. And here you will use the one Tafshil. The Mishnah Berurah comments that the Sudam Afsekis is the last formal meal eaten prior to the onset of the fast, at which a person must be particular about all the practices noted above. Therefore, a person should take care not to eat a filling meal in preparation for the fast, and thereafter eat only an informal snack as the Suda Mafsekas. This practice would retroactively render the meal eaten previously into the formal Suda Mafsekas, at which the proper guidelines were not followed. The aval, if it's just going to be something, a snack, lo nachshul sudas klal. So you got to sit down and make it like a sudas kva. The sudas of sekes has to be you sit on the floor, take a piece of bread, not a snack. You try to convert it and have a hard-boiled egg. That could suffice as a real meal. We will conclude this section by noting that this year, 5782, that means last year, Tisha B'Av is observed on Sunday. Thus, according to the practical halacha, the Suda Mafsekas, which takes place on Shabbat, contains none other restrictions. Rather, Shulchan Aruch writes that one may eat a normal Suda Shlishis every week. The only restriction that one may stop eating by sunset. We don't have to learn that today. Okay, let's go to
Okay.
9.
Ernie,
Huh?
So you have to bench and then wash again? Is that the
I
sequence?
believe so. I believe so. So the customer should have a dinner at 6 o'clock or 5:30, let's say, right? And then you finish 6:30, 6:45, bench, and then the Suda Mafsekas would be like 7:30.
No, that's too close.
Not too close. We're talking about the fast starts 7:59.
Yeah, that's too close.
No, the Suda Mafsekas, that's when you do the Suda Mafsekas. It's right before, 50 minutes before, 20 minutes before. And you would bench. But the custom is, I'm surprised they didn't bring it, is not to sit together to make a zimun. Each person is supposed to sit separately and you bench, but not the zimun. You can. Fasting on Tisha B'Av for women who are pregnant. One of the most, in our age, in our chabura, is not as relevant, maybe relevant for some of our children, maybe grandchildren. One of the most important halachic issues related to Tisha B'Av is the obligation to fast. We will not study the halachas of fasting in detail, but we'll briefly discuss some of the halachas and guidelines given specifically for women who are pregnant. The Shulchan Aruch records that it's a universal requirement to observe the 4 fast days mentioned in Zechariah, namely Tzom Gedalia, Aser B'Teves, Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, and Tisha B'Av. However, Tisha B'Av is treated more stringently than other minor fast days. Tisha B'Av is less stringent than Yom Kippur. The latter is a Torah obligation. For this reason, only one who is in a potentially life-threatening situation is exempt for fasting on Yom Kippur. While even one who has the status of a chola she'ein bo sakon, let's say it's not life-threatening, but you're bedridden, it's exempt for fasting on Tisha B'Av, as we'll see in the next source. In both cases, though, pregnant and nursing women are required to fast in principle, both on Tisha B'Av and on Yom Kippur. So the Ramah writes that although women who are pregnant or nursing are not obligated to fast on the other minor fast days, they are obligated to fast on Tisha B'Av. And then there's some women who have a custom on Tainus Esther, since it's a woman's fast, to be more machmir on that fast, but that we won't go into now. Shulchan Aruch, Hakol Chayavin, this Anus Arbet Tzomis Halol v'Asur Lifrot Geder. You have to fight. You cannot not do it, says the Ramah. Uboros u'menikiyos, pregnant women and nursing women, shemitzaros harbe, that are in a lot of discomfort, ein lesanos. Dafilu einan mitztaros. They shouldn't fast, and even if they're not in great discomfort, einan mechuyavis lesanos, they're not mechuyev to me. There's a minhag to be machmir, but the Meikar Adin, they're not mechuyev. That's by the other fasts. Dafka begimel tzoymos. Avo b'tishav mechuyavis lahashlim. Pregnant and nursing women are mechuyev to finish. Despite the obligation to fast on Tisha B'Av, the Aruch HaShulchan writes that if a pregnant woman is weak enough to be near illness, even if it's not danger, they should not fast. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, afilu b'Tisha B'Av, imein chalushos shekarov sheyiplu, L'choili. If a pregnant or a nursing woman is weak, that they might get sick, af v'lo sakana ein lehem lesanos. They should not fast. V'zeu ha'hefresh bein Tisha B'av Yom HaKippurim. And that's the difference with Yom Kippur. Yom HaKippurim, ein lechol rak b'makom sakana. The only permit on Yom Kippur is sakana. U'v'Tisha B'av Filu shelo b'makom sakana. The b'makom choili lo goz rabba. When the Chachamim established Tisha B'av, they were not going to that a sick person needs to fast. The Piskei Tshuvos summarizes some of the circumstances in which pregnant women would be exempt. Pregnant woman is weak. So interesting, in the early pregnancies, particularly if she's had episodes of miscarriages, she's worried about her body, and she has like if she has any of the following things, dizziness, dam, anemia, hemoglobin less than 10, tfeko slave, which is like palpitations, lachatz dam gavoa, hypertension, or hypotension, daleket, fever, shetzricha lekabel antibiotika, choim, or choim ekevatzom. Some people get fever from fasting. He says straight, they should not fast. He says, as the time has gone on, and we are weaker, we're more fragile, and some places have very hot weather. And so many Morei Hara are lenient for pregnant women. That throughout the pregnancy they shouldn't fast. See Rav Shlomo Zalman, Tzurba Bris, and when Tisha B'av falls on Shabbos, observed on Sunday, there's even more room to be lenient for a pregnant person or ill, but that's not noigeh for us this year. You should ask a Talmid Chacham. The Yalkut Yosef writes that pregnant women who are weak may eat after consultation with the rabbinic authority, and he stresses that in cases of pregnancy or nursing, a competent halachic authority should always be consulted. Some contemporary poskim are lenient with respect to fasting on Tisha B'av for pregnant or nursing women. Others feel that if they drink sufficient fluids before the fast, eat plenty of summer fruits such as grapes, and remain indoors in an air-conditioned environment, he means plenty of grapes before the fast, and remain indoors in an air-conditioned environment, they will generally not have any particular problem fasting more than other individuals. In the context of Yom Kippur, it's generally recommended to consult with a rabbinic authority as well as with a doctor. I get a lot of calls both on Tisha B'av and Yom Kippur in patients who have kidney stones, and they are warned to always drink lots of fluid. One of the reasons you get kidney stones is if the urine gets very concentrated because they're not drinking enough fluid, there's always some calcium dissolved in the urine. But if the KSP if it's so concentrated, the calcium will participate out, will come out of solution. Like when you have hot water and there's salt dissolved in the water. But if you boil it, you're going to see salt crystals appear in the water. There's a chemical formula. Harold, you remember Harold? You remember in chemistry
Supersaturated?
Saturation.
Yeah, supersaturation, yeah.
Supersaturated, it comes out of solution.
Right,
If
it
you boil off-
precipitates in the bottom.
It
Yeah.
precipitates out. So that's what happens with patients with kidney stones. So many questions are always asked: Can they continue drinking fluids on Tisha B'av and Yom Kippur? So there's always pachos mikashir, that if somebody drinks less than the normal shear, let's say less than revius, if they have to, there's some kind of it would have to be a sakana.
You know, there's a fad lately to do IVs. Have you heard about this? People having IVs during a fast?
Well, there's no isser to do that, but why would you do that?
I mean,
guess it's-
I hear people do that now. That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
It's the in thing. Well, you'd have to get the IV put in before Yom Kippur, because you can't be choivel somebody on
But
Yom
Tisha B'Av's not a problem.
Tisha B'Av is not a,
Mhm.
It's a business.
what, to give IVs to people?
That's our business. It's like a side-
Yeah, suppositories.
Yeah, suppositories.
All kinds.
Yeah.
That's the next step.
So the Yalkut Yosef writes that pregnant women who are weak may eat after consultation with a rabbinic. Yeah, we said that. Mu'uberes b'nikot shesh lam chol. Pregnant women or nursing women are sick. Afilein bo sakana. Even without sakana, ein lam l'sanos petition, but they shouldn't fast. If yesh lam chusha rabov, they're very weak. Yasu shelas chacham, they should ask. V'nachon nasu shelas chacham b'chomin, but they should ask anyways. V'yoledes toch shloshim yom l'leida. A woman who's given birth within 30 days, Yechol lahakel shlo isanis petition. That's a blanket heter. He says 30 days within childbirth. And should eat right away in the morning. Okay. Now, page 312. As a function of the gravity of the day on Tisha B'Av, it's forbidden not only to eat and drink, but also to enjoy other routine pleasures. Like Yom Kippur, the 5 inuyim or afflictions are forbidden, which include washing. We're talking now washing your body, applying oils, wearing shoes, and intimate relations. And that's in the Gemara Taanis 30a and the Shulchan Aruch. In this section, we focus mainly upon washing and bathing. The Gemara in Pesachim notes that's even forbidden merely to place a finger in water on Tisha B'Av. You can't even put your finger. Same thing like Yom. However, as noted in the Beis Yosef, it's forbidden to wash for pleasure, not for halachic purposes. Thus, when a person washes Natilas Yadayim, you can wash to the base of the fingers. I mean, you can walk to the knuckles. Zeh Loshen Rabbeinu Yerucham, Hiskimu Balei HaTofa, Shenotet Yodav Shachar L'Kol Mokom Tzarech L'Zar, Shlo Yitol Ela Ad Sof Kishrei Etzbosa, just until the base of the fingers and not the whole hand. Ad Sof Kishrei Etzbosa V'lo Kol Hayad, V'Achin Aktinan. That's how we paskin. And Rav Yosef Karo, who was the Beis Yosef, confirms that position in the Shulchan Aruch, both in Hilchos Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. The Rama likewise writes in Hilchos Yom Kippur that a Kohen may wash his hands before Birchas Kohanim. Birchas Kohanim is generally performed by Ashkenazim in Eretz Yisrael on a daily basis, but even in Eretz Yisrael, most Ashkenazim do not recite it on the morning of Tisha B'Av. It's recited instead at Mincha on Tisha B'Av, where the halachic question of washing hands should be relevant. One may wash his hands in the morning, but he must be cautious to only wash until the base of the fingers. That's talking about Netilas Yadayim. Similarly, says the Rama V'chein Kohen, Ha'olam L'duchin Notel Yadav. Here in America, on Tisha B'Av, it would not apply. It does apply in Yom Kippur, when we duchin. Aval Pishein Taharos, the whole Rov Rechitza She'ena Mechuvin Bolasanik Muteris. Even if they are clean, he can wash his hands. Again, with what we're saying, up till the fingers, because washing, not for pleasure, is permitted. A number of posts, including the Shari Tshuva, emphasize that a Kohen washes his whole hands and not merely to the base of his fingers. Ayin Sham, Shekosov Antisidam Shel Kohen Leduchin B'Yom Kippur and Tzach Ad Chibur Hayad. You must go up to your wrist, even Shumin Adin. Chaim, you do that on Yom Kippur, right?
Wash the whole hand?
Yeah.
Yeah, so does Harold.
And I'm saying, so does Yaakov. We have Kohanim here who can verify this halacha. We don't know what you guys do out there.
And Harold.
You see that the Ramah was not clear. And that's why the Shari Tshuva came and explained that the Kohen should wash his whole hand. So in
But-
addition, huh?
I don't know. I think that the Yom Kippur issue is a it's an issue of a positive mitzvah versus a negative mitzvah. There's a clash.
we see that the concept of washing is for tanug. That's what's prohibited. But the tila of mitzvah is
Correct.
not.
Right, that's what I'm saying, right, same thing.
Same thing. So in addition to the allowance for washing motivated by halachic reasons, the Shulchan Aruch says that if your hand is dirty, you can get rid of it. If there's dung or dirt on your hand, you shouldn't wash your whole hand if you don't need to. You should just clean it to get rid of the dirt. The Mishnah explains that the prohibition only applies to washing for pleasure, but not for reasons of cleanliness. For this reason, the Mishnah writes that washing food is also permitted on Tisha B'Av, meaning women who are, let's say they're preparing a Suda for after Tisha B'Av, and you're washing fruits and vegetables, you're allowed to wash it. Your hands get wet, that's okay. Mutter lirchotz lavi, the ena osra l'rechitza shel tanu. Sometimes the noshim amevashlos, the tzrichos lirchotz habasar, achte b'meila rochos kam yadeh mutter. If our hands are going to get wet, it's okay. Although washings for purposes of cleanliness is clearly permitted, there's nonetheless some ambiguity regarding the terms of which it applies. If a person wishes to wash away perspiration, as opposed to, let's say, a dirty foreign substance, is that permitted? The question touches upon the basic nature of the leniency. Is it that any washing, which is not primarily for pleasure, is permitted? Or is washing essentially forbidden unless a person is removing a specific foreign substance? So the Mishnah Berurah rules that a person may wash to remove perspiration, even on Yom Kippur. Miloshen zeh mashma di imazeya harbe, v'rotze lirchotz lavir azeya mutter, kiven she'ena rechitza shel tanug. So the Mishnah Berurah is lenient. Nevertheless, the Mishnah Berurah ultimately permits washing under these circumstances only for an istinus. Istinus is somebody who's a very finicky person. By the way, I've heard Rav Hershel Schechter write many times that bisman hazeh, most of us are considered istinus. Like, for example, we shower daily. So therefore, it's not considered all the various dinim of rechitza and even shaving and everything. He writes a lot about this issue of istinus. Say it again, Susie.
Wasn't that just the 9 days?
In many cases, with sphera and in many things where it's discussed, this issue of istinus is brought up. So the Mishnah Berurah says that this permit to washing zeya is a sensitive person. The Chavetz Chaim explains the reason in Sharat Sion that it's preferable to be stringent to accommodate poskim such as the Bach and Taz that did not allow washing to remove perspiration. If you're not a finicky person, you don't really need to do that washing. You should be machmir on that day not to wash. You can't anoint yourself with like a pleasant, fragrant oil to remove smell. So therefore, you can't do that either. The washing for Zayah is also prohibited. Says the Sharat Tzir, also the Mishnah Berurah. These were earlier achronim, right? The Bach, which is the main commentary on the Tur, and the Taz, the main commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, and the Pri Chodesh, which is also on the Tur, who are machmir l'daitem had to come around Tur v'Shulchan Aruch shelo osra l'chitza shel tanug. That which the Shulchan Aruch, the Tur said they only prohibited a pleasure wash. That was lav dafka. It was only to say that, we want you to be able to wash dirt, but nothing else. The Ramah suggests another solution for someone who needs to refresh himself. Muter lishros mape b'mayim be'erev Tisha B'Av. You can take a handkerchief or a towel, soak it in water, erev Tisha B'Av. Umotzim in mayim v'yimis nageves. So you take it out of the water, but it becomes mostly dry. You can use it to sort of clean your face periodically on the fast itself. I guess it's a little moist, but it's not really washing. It's mostly dry. I wonder what those things they give you on an airplane?
Handy wipes.
Yeah, but those moist things, is that too moist?
Toilet.
Would the Mishnah Berurah consider that too? Is that primarily wet? Okay, so that probably would not be permitted.
They're very well.
Okay, right. Returning to the question of washing food, a similar question arises in relation to washing dishes, which also wets the hands. Contemporary posting discuss whether this is permitted on Tisha B'Av. According to Rav Moshe Feinstein and Rav Ben Zion Abba Shaul, it's not permitted unless one needs the dishes that day, and though after Chatzos may be more lenient. V'lirchotz kelim b'Tisha B'Av, to wash dishes on Tisha B'Av. Das Agon Rav Moshe Feinstein. This is the deer. There's a Mishnah Brura Dirshu edition, which is an outstanding edition because it takes the Achronim over the last 100 years, and Rav Yoshev and Rav Moshe and Rav Vosner, and in the back of every little section, you see little footnotes, which will bring the Mishnah Brura up to date. Mishnah Brura died in 1933, so there's a lot of halacha psuka that some were more lenient. I can tell you when I was in Avelis in Israel during Sukkot, I could only learn Avelis. So that's why I discovered the Dirshu. I hadn't seen it before. I learned all my Avelis halacha, like about, can you do hakafas on Simchos Torah, as an Avel. So there must have been 5 or 6 different opinions, besides what the Mishnah Brura wrote, more contemporary opinions. So it's a very nice edition, this Dirshu edition. So he says, Lichotz Kel, he brings Rav Moshe Feinstein. From Shmaitza de Moshe, so not from Igros Moshe. There's other collections of Rav Moshe's halacha. Shemenu tzarech lem hayom asur l'rochson. That if you didn't need the dishes that day, you should not wash it. Okay, in the case of b'shut or l'tzion, and that's the Abba, Ben Zion Abba Shaul. Shein lichotz kelim shein tzarech lem kaid. You also shouldn't wash it unless you need it. You're taking your mind off the aveilus. After Chatzos, when all of Tisha becomes more lenient, you can wash anything. Because the meal that you're going to break your fast with, that could be prepared after Chatzos. Tinalach also writes that it's permitted for a person to wash food or dishes if they are needed during the course of the day, because one's primary intent is really not to benefit from the washing. It's preparing food for the break fast or for the children. She can wash food or dishes, but it's not pleasure washing. When you are cleaning dirt off of your hands, there's a little bit of pleasure. The ikar kavana is to get rid of the dirt. So he wants to make the same issue regarding that. Page 317. What about Torah study and wearing tefillin? Chazal instituted practices which ensure that Tisha B'Av would be experienced not merely as a day without eating, but as one of a definitive mournful mood. One of the other activities forbidden is the study of Torah, recognized by the Gemara Masechta Tainis. You can't read Tanakh. You can't learn anything, not Gemara, not Midrash. You can read from places that you're not really used to, so you're not going to derive pleasure from. The Bekinos. You can read Kinos, Be'iyuv, say for Iyuv, Udvar Maram Shebiyirmiyah. You can read Navi Yirmiyah, V'tinaka shel beis Rabban B'teilim. But the children don't go to school. That we don't want the heart to rejoice with the study of Torah. So based on this, Masechta Tainis, Shulchan Aruch says, "Asur likros b'Torah neviim u'ksuvim l'shanis b'mishna v'medrash v'makmor v'halachos v'agodos mishum shenamar pikudei Hashem yishar misamchei leiv." That the study of Torah makes your heart happy. The Tinaka shel beis Rabban B'teilim, both. The cheder is closed. Aval karehu be'iyu, u'devar ma'aram should be Yirmiyah. Then yesh benem psukim nechama tzarach l'dagam. You should skip the comforting psukim. Although there's a pronounced restriction on routine Torah learning, if a person thinks of a novel Torah insight, he may write it down. If he's concerned, he may forget it. Says the Kaf HaChaim, V'chein psakim, you want a paskin, or chidushim, shama that you heard from somebody, or shechidesh, you yourself came up with it. Bidvorma mutar, we're talking about Torah subjects that you're allowed to learn. Likros betushava mutar lekoisra beteshva. You didn't davra ovid shari. You're going to lose it if you don't write it. So you're permitted it. Amnam because of od sham. The meeting is chadish is a chidush b'Tisha B'Av. Somebody who came up with a novel thought on Tisha B'Av. Avagav dem cholamoid cause for lahatir. So on cholamoid also you're not supposed to write. So on cholamoid, if you came up with a big chiddush, you could write it. Shiny Tisha B'Av the simcha hilo kishekois of chidushei Torah. The person has a great simcha when he's writing chidushei Torah. And so therefore, Tisha B'Av is going to be different than Chol HaMoed. It's only one day. Chol HaMoed is 6 days, potentially. And you might forget if you don't write it down. Here it's only 1 day. So Al-Kenira, says the Kaf HaChaim, you should just sort of write abbreviations. Shouldn't write the whole thing out. The regular daily tefillah includes a number of passages from the Torah and oral tradition, which might be regarded as learning material, as much as if not more than tefillah. Accordingly, the Torah notes that some poskim write that these passages should not be recited in Tisha B'Av as they constitute learning Torah, which is prohibited. But the Torah disagrees, maintaining that any, like Tanad Rabbi Shmuel Oimer in the morning, that any passage have been incorporated in the daily tefillah are not included in the prohibition. Because of a Ramban, the Noagu Ktsas Sholikros Parshas HaKorbanos Umishnas Ezu Mekomon Midrash Rabbi Shmuel Beis HaKnesses Lefishos Likros B'Torah. So the Ramban held that those parshios that we laying before Baruch Sha'amar, you should leave out. However, it says the Torah ain't near. I don't agree. Lefishe'ein lanu isur b'seder hayom shari korin Kriyas Shema. The biggest proof is we read Kriyas Shema, which is learning Torah. We make the bracha before and after. We call up aliyas, maftir benavi. Uparsha kabbalah vezim mekomim keneged atami teknua. Korbanos and vezim mekomim was to take the place of the daily korban atamid, which was offered on Tisha B'Av. Oimer kedarko ve'ena choishesh. Accepting the Torah's moderate stance, the Shulchan Aruch rules that's permitted to read the passages of Torah learning, which are included in the routine prayers. The Ramah adds that a person may also review the Torah reading. Mutar likros kol seder hayom, uparshas hakorbanos, umishnat sezu mekomon, umidrash Rabbi Shmuel, umutar lazar haparsha b'Tisha B'Av. You can review the parsha. The Achronim debate what the Ramah meant. The Mishnah Berurah comments that the Ramah is speaking about the Torah reader. The Baal Koren, this reader is permitted to practice his reading. The Mishnah Berurah also indicates that anyone may review the morning Torah reading, as the verse thereof are particularly relevant to the tragedy of Tisha B'Av. We read Ki solid banim uvnei banim, and so that you can learn. That otherwise, the Mishnah Berurah says the only person who might be able to practice is the Baal Koren. We're talking about laning Shabbos, so you can look at the parsha, but regular people can't. The Taz understands the Ramah, maybe permitting even non-Baal Koros to perform the regular, right, Shnaim Mikra Ve'echad Targum, the regular recitation of the weekly Torah portion, or Shnaim Mikra Ve'echad Targum. Another related question, what about recitation of Tehillim? Tehillim is part of Tanakh. Maybe reciting Tehillim is a form of studying Torah. What's more, it's hard to describe reciting Tehillim as really routine prayer because it's not part of the standard formulaic prayers. Rav Yoshe Ber Soloveitchik spoke at length of the nature of Tisha B'Av as a day in which prayer is stultified, means it's like silent. And as he explains at the beginning of the day, the pain is too raw and present for us to assume a posture of supplicance. This light, even strictly as prayer and not learning, notwithstanding a situation of imminent danger, reciting Tehillim is fundamentally inappropriate on Tisha B'Av. According to the conclusion of most poskim, a person should not recite Tehillim on Tisha B'Av. However, the Yalkut Roisuf writes that there is some basis for leniency. Somebody who's lenient has someone to rely on. Of a chok Yisrael, but there's something called chok, which is Parsha, Zohar, Gemara, the Seder Mamodos, Yesh Lachmer Shaloli Korbatishm. That you should. Afilim Uragabah B'choyim, if you do it every day. V'oyim b'savat tefillah shir shal yom. You do say the shir shal yom, ve'en kelokenu, pidu maktoris, kamo b'chol yom. We wait until the afternoon. Right. But I think we also do everything in the afternoon. According to a number of Rishonim, in accordance with the mournful character of Tisha B'Av, we refrain from wrapping tefillin. This corresponds with the halach of a private mourner. We're talking about an onen before the burial, who's patur mitzvahs, who doesn't wrap his tefillin on the first day of mourning when a first degree relative passed away. However, most Rishonim write that Tisha B'Av is unlike personal mourning in this respect, and a person does wrap his tefillin. As a compromise, Rav Karo writes in the Beis Yosef Shulchan Aruch that the standard practice is to put on tefillin during mincha. So it's the Beis Yosef first, commentary on the tour. And the Shulchan Aruch says, cotton. You do wear tzitzis, tachas b'kadav below bracha, so the custom recorded by Shulchan Aruch is the prevalent one in most locations. The Ben Ish Chai, who was a Sephardi, defends and writes that a person should wrap tefillin in the morning and recite the accompanying parts of Kriya Shema at home before Shachris, though he agrees that tefillin is not worn in public. Beyond Tisha B'Av yanich tzitzis tefillin Rashi v'Rabbeinu Tam b'boker b'beito v'yikra Kriya Shema bilvad v'achach yelech l'beis hakneses v'palim matzipur. The Yalkut Yosef observes that some congregations conduct themselves according to an old minhag of Jerusalem, which is to wrap tefillin and tots in the morning, even during the public tefillah as usual. Regardless, the most important consideration is that there is a uniform practice in the synagogue. I mean, you shouldn't have agudos. Everyone should be doing the same thing. Minhag Yerushalayim lispal shachris b'Tisha B'Av imat tzibur b'talusu tefillin kiminhagam b'chol hayom. Ve'la rotzim lido came. If they want to go back and do that, they can. However, which is not to wear tefillin in the morning, they shouldn't change. That's clear. What would be bad is for half the shul to do this, half the shul to do that. Avoid having they should come to an agreement. They should all do the same thing. He says that those people who do it make a bracha. They should continue putting on Rabbeinu Tam tefillin. And daven without any change. There is a widespread practice to remove the paroches. That's by the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. No Aglash says the paroches are not kodesh. Mishum dechsiv bitza imrato. He has torn asunder. And on the other fast days, we have the prayer. As on other fast days, we have the prayer Anenu to the Amid of Tisha B'Av. Sephardim recite this in each of the three tefillos of the day as follows. An individual recites Anenu as an addition to the bracha of Shomei Tefillah. The Shliach recites it in the fuller form as in a bracha between the brachas of Revanyenu and Refainu. And this is spelled out in the Shulchan Aruch. Yachid Omer Anenu b'Shomei Tefillah. Ben Yachid Shekibel Alav Tainis Ben Yachid Mispal Matzibur B'Tainis Tzibur. A Yachid says it, whether the Yachid accepted Tainis or whether the Yachid is davening with the Tzibur. The Shliach Tzibur Shemisadet Filosu B'Lachash. The Shliach Tzibur, when he says his own Anenu, when he says his own Shemon Esrei, says it. Yachidami Ushamet Tefillah. Let's talk about the Ashkenazi practice. It's for individuals to refrain from reciting Anenu till Mincha. The Shliach Tzibur will say it in the morning. He does recite it, even as the Shliach Tzibur does recite it in his repetition of the Amidah during Shachris. But not the Yachid. As discussed, that we will say the special but we'll continue. As discussed in Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, this custom is based on the concern that a person may end up not completing his fast. And if he says in his prayer that it's a day of fasting, his words are not true. So therefore, don't say it in the morning, say it only in Mincha. He'll get sick, and then he's going to be a shakri. He's representing the tzibur. Someone in the tzibur is going to fast. The other Soimas, the Yachid says it as well. Even he's going to get sick and eat. Since they established the tinus, however, that's the Shulchan Aruch. We don't paskin that way. We Ashkenazim only say anenu in all the fasts, only mincha time. In addition, on Tisha B'Av, we say Nachem, which is a tefillah consoling Yerushalayim. The opinions differ regarding when the prayer is recited. Sephardim recited in all three tefillos. Ashkenazim recited only at Mincha. Uvar v'Yisrael Tisha B'Av, Omer Yachid tefillas Nachem. We don't do that. Zerechad Pon Yerushalayim. V'chein minig Yerushalayim Omer Nachem b'chol HaTefillah. Arvi Shachros Mincha. He says it with full voice as a shliach tzibur in all three davenings. We don't go back. However, Achenu Ashkenazim, our brothers, the Ashkenazim, and it's clear. If you forgot to say it, if you forgot there as well, so we will just see. He talks about sitting on the floor. You make yourself less comfortable. It's a custom, not a formal obligation. There's rooms for leniency. Some have a practice to sleep on the floor using a mattress bed. The Mishnah Berurah writes that one who's unable to sleep directly on the floor need not be stringent, may conduct himself more leniently. The custom is to sit up on the floor in a low chair. Based on the Maran, the Bach says, it's only a minute, we are lenient in the afternoon. It was a custom to refrain from engaging in work on Tisha B'Av until Chatzos. The Ramah says that the widespread convention is to refrain from labor until midday. My personal minhag, I only go into the office after Chatzos. Even according to those who hold like the Ramah that labor is permitted after midday, writes that a person should not go to work or spend time in his business so he does not lose focus. The Chayim, the God-fearing person, should even be stringent, refrain from labor all that day. Rav Chaim Kanievsky rules that since the Mishnah does not cite this position about labor, there's no reason to be machmir. We do not greet one another on Tisha B'Av. Similarly, we don't say Shalom Aleichem. We also don't say good morning. You don't greet each other socially. But if someone has a mazel tov, you can say mazel tov. Okay, there's a machshava thing for Rabbi Sachs, which is, and something about Rav Goren, which I encourage everybody to read. But I think it was a nice review. Everyone should have an easy fast. And by the way, so we're going to take a hiatus for 2 weeks. Susie and I are going to be in Greece for the next 2 Tuesdays, and the time doesn't work. I am going to be doing Daf Yomi but at the weird time, like noon time or something like that. Like when 8 p.m. my time, which is, no, I'm sorry, 10 p.m., 10 p.m. my time, that's when we did it last year.
You 10 hours. Use 10 hours.
Right, so 10 p.m. will be noon time.
Ah,
Yes, yes.
10 p.m. in Greece is gonna be noon time in Los.
ah,
That's what we did last year too. There were a number of people like Bernie and Harold were on the trip, but I remember some signed in at noon time. But we'll talk about that by another time.
Portugal is
But-
not now.
So everybody have an easy fast, have a good Shabbos, and we'll see everyone again in 3 weeks. We'll send emails at that time.
all right.